Coming up on this episode, the latest player the Warriors are interested in shows that the franchise is more than aware of their need for more front court shooting. But do they really need it if we're to believe in an intriguing off-season development for one of their veteran players? Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Hope you're all having a good start to your week. Davis Bertans, he is the latest player that the Warriors seemingly have interest in an intriguing development over the past 24, 36 hours or so. This really came about through his manager, his agent, I should say, on an Instagram story on, Monday, US time, Tuesday for me, where he posted a photo of Davis Bertans and said that he would prepare for the upcoming season with the Warriors. And of course, that drew plenty of speculation on social media about what that possibly may mean. And it has since been stressed by, I know, NBA insider Mark Stein and a couple others have reported as well that the Warriors are just working out Bertans at the moment. There has been no agreed training camp contract or anything like that at this stage. But I think it's fair to say that there might be more opportunity of that being the case than, say, Bruno Caboclo, who in the last couple of weeks also worked out with the Warriors before ultimately signing another deal overseas. So, Bertans, interesting, obviously coming off a 5-year, $80 million contract, the last of which I think was a team option, and obviously the Charlotte Hornets didn't pick that up because over that 5-year span, it's really been one of the worst contracts in basketball. But if you look at just prior to that, he was one of the best shooters in the NBA, one of the best high-volume shooters in the NBA. His nickname is the Latvian Laser, and he stands at 6'10". So when you combine that level of three-point shooting with the size, there's clearly some intrigue there, particularly for a roster that, as we keep saying, lacks front-court shooting with the current power forward options / center options surrounding Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Kyle Anderson, Kevon Looney, Trace Jackson Davis, none of who are respected by any means by opposing defenses. So Bertans, there's some intrigue there. And particularly you look at the Warriors this offseason having already gone after Paul George, missed out on him, 6'8", known for his three-point shooting. Larry Markkinen, 7-footer, known for his three-point shooting, missed out there. Now, it's kind of depressing, I suppose, that we are getting to a state where we've gone from Paul George to Larry Markkinen to Davis Bertans. It's a bit depressing, and it kind of maybe shows how far the Warriors have fallen a little bit, the fact they weren't able to get deals done for those two guys. And now we're sitting here talking about Davis Bertans in early September. But those guys, I don't want to compare Bertans to all-star caliber players like PG and Lowry, but there's some similarities there in terms of the size and the three-point shooting. Now, is Bertans is it actual functional size for him? Probably not. I don't think he necessarily uses his height in a way that most 6'10" guys should. Shooting-wise, it probably does. It allows him to shoot over defenders a little bit easier. That's fine, but he's not a great defender. He's not a strong rebounder. He's a one-trick pony. That's what he is. He's a shooter, and that's it. Albeit previously he has been a very good three-point shooter. Started his career with the Spurs, then went to the Wizards, and then more recently that contract has been thrown around a little bit to Dallas, and then OKC, and then most recently to Charlotte. And of course, as I said before, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, which is no surprise because that contract, 5-year, $80 million, vomit-worthy. One of the worst in the league. To the point now where the guy can't even get a minimum contract. Like, we're sitting here again early September, and he's having to work out with the Warriors to try and get another NBA opportunity, which is pretty rare for a guy that's coming off a deal that was 5-year, $80 million, and he's 31 years old. It's not like he should be washed up age-wise in terms of his 35, 36. We're not talking about Rudy Gay the last offseason. Remember, he was in a similar situation, working out with the Warriors, ended up getting a training camp contract, didn't make the final roster. But, Rudy Gay was 37 years old, right? This is a 31-year-old, should theoretically be in the prime of his career, and just isn't, and he's really fighting just to get another NBA opportunity now. But if you look back to, why did he get that 5-year, $80 million contract in the first place? He had a really, really good 2019-20 season with the Washington Wizards. If you go back to the year before that, so 2018, 2019, he averaged 8 points a game on 42.9% three-point shooting and actually was like earned Six Man of the Year votes, like was 11th, I think, in Six Man of the Year. So that was an okay season. But then 2019-20, he really kind of burst onto the scene some more, averaged 15.4 points on 42.4% three-point shooting on 8.7 attempts per game. 8.7 is quite a lot. Now, that's obviously the number that like Pods is trying to get to that he detailed last week. But 8.7, that's a lot. That puts you in kind of the top 20, 25, like three-point attempts in the league. And for a guy who's a role player and playing no more than 20, 25 minutes a game, like he's out there to do one thing, and that's to get three-point shots up, right? And so we obviously know the premium placed on three-point shooting around the league. And as a result of that season, over 15 points per game on over 42% three-point shooting, he gets that 5-year, $80 million contract from the Wizards. Now, I think most people probably thought at the time, okay, that's a bit much. But if he just went on to replicate that over the last few seasons, then I think that's more than fair enough in today's climate to be getting that kind of money, particularly, again, going back to the premium placed on three-point shooting, which is exactly why the Warriors are looking at Davis Bertans right now, because they just don't have the front court shooting, as I spoke about. And yes, we've gone on a pretty big decline here in terms of the caliber of player targeting, in terms of from Paul George to Markkanen to Bertans. But I can understand the intrigue from a Warriors perspective to get a guy in here who not only have we not got any three-point shooting, kind of the 4-5 positions, but in Bertans, you've got an elite one, right? Not just a guy who can hit an occasional three, but a guy who this is his primary role, is to shoot the ball from deep, right? And career 7.7 points per game, 39.6% from three. It's been a rough few seasons, yes. I do wonder, one thing that I am semi-interested in, and maybe why I'm trying to be optimistic about this. Like, I don't think it will happen. I'll get into that in a second. But if I'm trying to be optimistic about this, maybe it's a case of, okay, this guy just hasn't cared once he got the money. Once he got his 5-year, $80 million contract, the numbers have declined since then, and maybe he just didn't care enough. Maybe now, having been waived by the Hornets and now becoming a free agent again, maybe it might spike things again to increase focus and concentration, increased effort from him to try and be an NBA caliber player, a rotation player for the Warriors or anywhere else around the league. And maybe it might kick him into gear a little bit. That's my only optimism, is that some guys around the league, and some guys in all sports, like we talk about it in Australian rules football all the time as well, and we're coming into the off-season, there's different talk about contracts and stuff like that, where some guys just want to get paid, and once they get paid, they don't put in the effort required to be a quality athlete, a quality player. And maybe that's the case for Davis Bertans. Now, again, that's me just trying to be glass half full a little bit and being a bit optimistic as to what he could possibly do for a franchise next season. I don't think it will happen. Now, he might get a training camp contract. I can see that being the case. But in terms of, again, the Warriors roster right now, not having the financial flexibility to sign a guy to that 15th roster spot, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to waive Guy Santos to bring in Davis Bertans? Where is the upside? Where is the upside? I'd rather just take a risk on Guy, to be honest, and say, well, you're 6'8", you can be a 3-4. You showed last season that you can do the little things that Bertans is never really been known for in terms of rebounding and hustle plays and stuff like that. I'd just rather take a risk on Guy than, waive him and bring in Bertans, as he would fit certain situations where you need a guy like that who the Latvian laser can go in there and get some 3-point shots up very quickly. Like, he would, be reasonable in a limited role in specific situations, but I don't think it's necessarily worth taking the risk or worth waiving Guy Santos in order to make it happen. And I just don't think there's many players, like there's no one really out there on the free agency market right now that I think is worth doing that for, unless, like, the only thing I could think of is if the Warriors really wanted a another point guard option, which I think they do need as well in terms of more depth behind Steph and Pods. And, they got Markel Fultz or something like that. Now, in that scenario, yeah, I could see them waiving Guy Santos. I'd be comfortable enough with that. But for Bruno Caboclo, I didn't think it was ever going to happen. And for Davis Bertans, I don't think that's necessarily the case as well. But I think the interest in Bertans clearly continues to showcase Golden State know and acknowledge that they need more shooting in the front court, that there just isn't enough at this point. And even if, not even just talking about the 4-5 positions, but the 3 position with Andrew Wiggins, like, you're hoping that he gets, upwards closer to 40% again next season rather than he ended up getting to like 35.8% last season, which is like around league average. But geez, early last season, it was woeful. And, you're relying on him to get back to a certain point where defenses are respecting him and closing out to him in a way they weren't necessarily last season. And then, Moses Moody as well. Is he going to get the opportunity? Who knows? We'll wait and see there. But he's another that can potentially play a small forward position. Again, will he get the opportunity? He's probably the Warriors. Is he the Warriors' second best? Sorry, no, he's not the second best shooter because Buddy Hield is, but third best shooter. How much are they going to play Buddy Hield at a 3? And that's going to really be problematic for your defense. But I could see Steve running with 3-guard lineups where it's like Steph, Pods, Hield, Steph, Melton, Hield, Steph, GP2, Hield. I don't know, like these combinations where it's like kind of we as fans lament the 3-guard lineup, but maybe we see those kind of lineups because of just the desperate need for shooting here. And particularly if you're going to play any combination of Draymond, TJD, JK, Slow-Mo, Loon, like you're going to need serious shooting in the other 3 positions if that's going to be the case, which you'd imagine it will be. JK and Draymond starting. Hopefully Draymond can shoot 40% again from 3, but I still don't think defense is going to guard him. JK, we'll wait and see. There's a little bit more scope for development there, obviously, given his youth, but that's still going to be a wait and see. And it's going to be a while yet until fans really respect his 3-point shot. So clearly there is an acknowledgement from Golden State with the players that they've been targeting this offseason. Even Caboclo had a really good Olympics. Now, he's not known for his 3-point shot, but he shot like 50% from 3 at the Olympics, so he's capable. And then to further on from this, Nikola Vucevic is a player who, for some reason, like he's obviously in trade speculation at the moment, given the direction the Bulls are going. They've got rid of Alex Caruso. They've got rid of DeMar DeRozan. I had a mind blank there, sorry. DeMar DeRozan this offseason. Clearly, Vooch, veteran player, another one that could be available. And I found it really fascinating. This is going back about a week now, I think. He had an interview, I'm assuming it was in Montenegro, his home country, B92 Sport, I think it was. And he was actually asked about and addressed specific trade speculation to the Warriors, which I found extraordinary because I don't think there's been any legitimate reporting about the Warriors being interested in Vucevic or anything like that. It's more so been proposals and Vooch being seen as a possible option for the Warriors as a similar-ish version to Markkanen, I suppose, after missing out on him. And there have been a couple of different trade proposals from relevant publications, I suppose, that have mentioned Vooch to the Warriors. But I found it interesting that the journalist or whatever for that publication in Montenegro or whatever it was, B92 Sport, actually asked Vooch about that specifically, and he addressed it and said it's all really guesswork and speculation, didn't really say anything that we wouldn't have already guessed from it. But I found that really fascinating. Just in terms of those, like Nikola Vucevic, those trade proposals, Stephen Noah of the Sporting News had one, it goes back a while now, I think maybe over a month, Wiggins and TJD for Vooch, Torrey Craig and Javon Carter. I just wouldn't do that. There's no way I'm giving up Andrew Wiggins for Nikola Vucevic, and there's no way I'm giving up Trace Jackson-Davis for Nikola Vucevic. I know they're different players. I appreciate that, but I just think, would I rather pay Vooch? I think he's 2 years, $44 million or something like that. 2 years, $42 million over the next 2 seasons. Trace Jackson-Davis has got 3 years left at like $7 million. Just value-wise, you're taking TJD, right? So I'm not giving up. I think they could both be in the mix. I get that. but I don't think I'd be giving up TJD for Vooch. And then Brett Siegel of Clutch Points also had another one, which was Peyton, Looney, and Moody for Vooch and Craig. Now, that's a lot more palatable to me, because in that scenario, like, you can argue that Wiggins and TJD are both starters, and I'm not giving up 2 starters for Nikola Vucevic, no way. But in this one, you could say, oh, well, Peyton, Looney, Moody, that's 3 role players, 3 bench guys, 3 guys that might not be in the top 8 of you, maybe not even the top 9 of your rotation. So that's a lot more palatable to me if you're bringing a guy who wasn't great last season. Let's put it mildly. He's not a good defender by any means. I do have some optimism that maybe playing next to Draymond, Vucevic's concerns defensively would be negated somewhat. But yes, he might not have had a good year last season, but he still averaged 18 points, 11 rebounds. The 3-point shooting, he shot 29.4% last season, which isn't good. And he was getting them up still. He was getting them up. Now, again, maybe there's some optimism at the Warriors, a little bit more spacing where, you're not playing alongside a DeMar DeRozan who's not spacing the floor either. A couple of the other Bulls guys who are questionable 3-point shooters, even Caruso to a point, although he shot the ball well from 3 last season. Maybe at the Warriors, playing alongside Steph, who knows, the 3-point shot could get a few more open looks and start nailing some. I'm not a huge fan. But I get why the Warriors might be interested in a guy like that. And he's a strong rebounder and he puts up points. He's a very skilled offensive player. Really a rich man's version of Saric from last season, you'd imagine. Now, the Saric experience probably makes me a bit pessimistic on what Vucevic could do. But I don't know. I could understand it. If they made that Peyton Looney Moody trade for Vooch and Torrey Craig, I don't think I'd be against that. Now, I wouldn't be totally for it. I actually don't know. I'm like on the fence. I don't want to be one of those guys that sit on the fence in these kind of conversations, but it would be an intriguing trade, but not one that you'd necessarily say, oh, Golden State win that trade, or even that Chicago win that trade, because who knows what Moody would develop into in Chicago or anywhere else if he gets traded in the next 6 months or so, whatever. But Vucevic, I can understand it, and it would bring a different element to the Warriors, that's for sure, in terms of his ability from mid-range and 3, at least past ability, whether he still can provide that for an NBA team. I mean, that's where his value lies, and that's why his contract right now isn't very valuable, I wouldn't have thought. And that's why the Warriors could probably get him for a package of Peyton, Looney, Moody, and keep all their picks. I don't think, like, Chicago would probably be happy just to take the upside of Moody and see what he could develop into, as they did with, the Thunder and getting Giddey for Caruso. So Warriors probably wouldn't have to include picks in that. It could just be that kind of deal. I don't hate it. And Torrey Craig's a nice player. He just kind of replaced Peyton as a bigger version of Peyton. He's a solid player, shot in excess of 39% from 3 the last 2 seasons. Again, there's some issues with his 3-point shooting and defense is actually guarding him, but he's a very, very good defender. He's got extensive playoff experience. There's no doubt about that. He's got more playoff experience than Vucevic, and that's always been the concern with Vucevic is how much does this guy impact winning? He can put up numbers, no doubt about that. Nightly double-double threat. How much does he actually impact winning? I think he's played like 15 or 16 playoff games in his 13-year career or something like that. Just like his teams have not got to the playoffs. And so what does that say about his ability to impact winning? I don't know. Now, do we need Nikola Vucevic? Do we need Davis Bertans? Do we need any kind of front court shooting? If there's going to be developments from the Warriors' current players, and that's where I wanted to transition into Kevon Looney, who, first of all, had, I'm not sure it was viral, but he had an Instagram post that drew some chatter, I suppose, yesterday, where he looked visibly slimmer than what he did at the end of last offseason. This was him working out during the offseason, obviously, and some workout photos from the offseason. There was that, and then I got an email with a link to an interview that he's obviously done recently with Brandon Robinson, I think it is, Scoop B. Brandon Scoop B Robinson, He's done an interview with him, and he spoke about the rejuvenation in his game, and particularly offensively, which was very, very interesting, and kind of went along with and reflected the photos that we saw from Loon on Instagram, where he looked visibly slimmer. So this is what he said during that interview part of it. He said, it's something that I've been practicing for years, but now it's time for me to shoot threes, shoot more mid-ranges. Steve wanted me to improve in that area, so I've been shooting a lot of shots and feeling good about my game, and so it's going to be a lot of surprises next year. Kevon Looney basically saying, I'm about to unveil more shooting, mid-range shooting, three-point shooting. Now, if you look at his numbers, if you go back to high school, college, like Loon was known for his perimeter game to a degree. Remember that viral video of, questioning whether Loon was going to be the next Kevin Durant. Now, he had the hip injuries that started in college. He still shot 41.5% from three-point range on 1.5 attempts in his lone year at UCLA. But he had the hip injuries started there, and then obviously had some hip issues after he got drafted by the Warriors as well. Surgeries, whatnot, limited his mobility, really transformed himself into the inside bruising center that we've known over the last couple of years. That isn't overly athletic, but he's able to impact the game with his defense and his rebounding and his screening, his passing, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be fascinating to see if he can revitalize his game again to maybe more of that high school college Loon, where he's a bit trimmer physically. Maybe that allows him to be a bit more athletic. I don't know how his hips are feeling nowadays, if that's even going to allow him to do that. But also being able to shoot the ball a little bit, because we've seen, I think his career high three-point attempts in a season is like 17, which was 2020-21 maybe, or 2019-20. I think it was 2019-20. He shot 17. He had a 3-year period where he went from 10 to 14 to 17 three-point attempts in the season from between 2018 and 2020. Since then, the last 3 seasons, he's taken 1 3-point attempt in each of the last 3 seasons. 1. Right. So this is a guy that does not shoot the ball from three-point range. Even if you look at his mid-range shots, they have drastically gone down. I think 3 seasons ago, it was at 55 shots from beyond 10 feet, right? That went down to 29 in 2022-23, and then 22 last season. That is total field goal attempts from beyond 10 feet over the last 3 seasons. So not only does he not shoot from 3, but his mid-range game has dramatically decreased as well. And it's going to be fascinating to see, it's all good to say in theory. It's all good to say, I'm going to shoot more mid-range jump shots, three-point jump shots. It's all good in theory, but it is going to be a fascinating storyline during training camp and in preseason. Is this actually going to be a thing? I'm excited by it. I'm excited by it because I think it's the only way Loon's going to get back into not just like a prominent role, but like in the rotation completely. Like, I just wonder, pending health and whatnot, I wonder how he'd actually get minutes above. He's not going to get minutes. He's not going to get minutes above Draymond, and it sounds like Draymond will probably be the starting center if they go with the Wiggs, JK, Draymond front court, and then TJD as the first guy off the bench. I don't know how Loon retakes his spot in the rotation over TJD unless he brings a new element to the table, like the shooting. And so again, it sounds great in theory. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but once games actually start, is it going to be a real thing where this guy can actually not just take some mid-range and three-point shots, but actually make some? He's taken 60 three-point attempts across a 9-year career to date. He's made 10. He's 10 of 60, 16.7%. The numbers are irrelevant, right? The numbers are completely irrelevant. This is just going back to his college days. He did show an element of it there, I suppose. Now, he's transformed himself into a completely different player. Now, can he transform back into more of that high school collegiate player? I have my doubts, but it's interesting nonetheless, and I think it's a good thing, because otherwise, if he just stayed on this path, I don't know where his minutes would necessarily come from, because there's just more upside in TJD, and obviously Draymond's going to play his fair share of minutes at center. So the whole Loon thing, going to be fascinating to see. It was a great interview. And for him, I suppose for that to come out around the same time as those photos, obviously, that he posted himself on Instagram, it does bring some intrigue on what version of Kevon Looney we're going to get next season, and whether it could be a different version than what we've seen in the past couple of seasons. Now, it could go completely haywire. It could be a real negative for him. Like, it could be a case of, okay, he's not done enough to, like, he's not a shooting threat by any means. And not only that, but he's lost the weight. So he doesn't have the bulkiness and the strength and the physicality to be as good a rebounder, as good a defender, as good a screener as he once was. So this is almost make or break, this kind of thing. So I'm super fascinated to see, but I think it's a risk, as I just outlined, but I think it's a good risk for Kevon Looney to take. So let me know what you think in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. What are you expecting from Loon next season? Are you interested, or are you expecting to see a completely different version of him? And what does preseason and the season hold for Kevon Looney? Because I think a lot of us think that he is likely to be out of the rotation for Golden State at the start of next season. There's no guarantees that he's in Steve Kerr's rotation. Anyway, I'm going to finish it up there. Thank you very much to those of you that have got through to this point of the episode, whether watching on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may get your podcasts. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel that'd be greatly appreciated. We're 1 off 750, I think, as I record this. If you have anything to say, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, you can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. And I'll see you on the next episode.